the show. It's me, Phil. I'm here with Christian Taylor.
Hey, Phil.
Hi, Christian. And Sky Jitani.
Hey.
Hi, Sky. And I'm going to do the theme song so we can jump right into it, and then we'll talk more afterwards. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. I missed the chord, and that really ruins the song. Hey, it's a podcast, and we got video. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky. Uh-huh, right. What are you drinking when I'm supposed to be calling your name for?
It's something in a Star Trek mug.
Say hi, Phil.
Hi, Phil.
And Christian, too.
Hi, Phil.
And we don't need a guest because we're all here for you. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. All right.
Woohoo.
I did some veggie recording this morning.
How'd that go?
I did veggie, and tomorrow it went fine. It went fine. The Netflix stuff, more Netflix stuff, and it's fun because there are 4 voice actors that do the entire series. It's Mike and I, and then 2 people out in L.A. So, and we can each, because this is a union production, we can each only do a certain number of characters in a show, or they have to pay us more. Mm-hmm. So, whenever they have extra characters, they just look down the list to see who's doing how many characters, and just throw extra characters at whoever
Doesn't have the most.
isn't full.
Oh.
So you can get completely random things, you know.
What'd they throw at you?
P girl.
Oh, that's a
Just
new one.
out of the blue. You're
P-girl.
P girl.
So you have to make it up.
They're like extras. They just have a line or two. Yeah, and then on the spots. And Mike was Carrot Mom.
What if you guys
Carrot
couldn't do
Top's mom.
P-girl and Carrot Mom?
They don't care. I mean, Doug just is like, come up with something. Come on, you got a P girl in you somewhere. Like
That sounds like a command.
So I pulled out Marcy. You know, I'm pulling out whatever I can. It's tricky though because male voice talent typically has a hard time doing like young boys, much less young girls.
So let me hear your P-girl.
Why, it's Marcy.
Oh.
You know, for what's in the Bible. Because she only had like 2 lines. And they were, so you could be very, very high.
And she's a P, so, a small female P
Has to have a tiny voice.
is a very small character.
That's true.
Almost hard to see.
Yeah.
Like a pin.
Like a couscous.
Oh.
They should do some couscous characters.
What is
Just a
couscous?
bunch of
Isn't it-
couscous.
I thought
It's a
couscous
grain.
was rice.
It's a grain.
Or
It's a grain.
That's
So
rice-like.
It's not really a veggie.
Are you saying grain isn't?
What about a chickpea? Is that like a pea that's gone to the wrong side of town?
That's a nut.
A
Isn't it
chickpea is
a nut?
a bean, isn't it? Isn't it a
bean?
bean?
But would
It's
that
a legume.
qualify for a VeggieTale character?
It's the wrong
That's what I meant, a legume.
Sure. Yeah. Could we make them ethnic?
A chickpea sounds like they should be wearing like a leather coat and smoking on the corner.
Really? Like chick track?
Hey, chickpea.
What
like,
are we?
Like chick track? Okay.
What are we talking about today? Going down some weird track.
We should do a show about young chickens that share the gospel through tracks and literature, and it'd be called Chick Track.
That sounds awful.
I think you should do a VeggieTale spoof on Grease. And they could the girls could be chickpeas.
I don't even know how that would work.
I don't think
With
so.
big hair.
I don't think so, Sky. Joel Osteen was in our beloved city of Chicago last night.
Really? What was he doing?
Praying,
I feel more prosperous already.
praying for the Walenda that was walking on a wire between Marina Towers and the Leo Burnett building.
So as people probably figure this out who are listening or watching, we're recording this rather early
Yes.
from its release date.
Yes, this one's being recorded early. Why is it being recorded early, Sky? What are you doing tomorrow?
I have to leave the country
Where are you going? Did they kick you out?
to an undisclosed location. No, I am a U.S. citizen, for those who are wondering, and I'm well within my rights to remain in this country.
Awesome. Good news for us.
I was born here. Just clear that up. No, we're leaving the country for
That's our story, and we're sticking with it. He was
Yeah.
born here.
We're calling it No Sky November.
We will
You're
have
leaving
no
for the month?
sky for the entire month of November.
We are going to South Africa for about 10 days, where
sounds
I will be teaching some folks, and then
YWAM.
Yeah, YWAM, Youth with a Mission.
YWAM.
There it is.
Are you
YWAM.
going
Is
on a
that the
boat?
best?
No.
Is that the best acronym of any Christian ministry?
YWAM?
I think so.
YWAM.
That's a pretty good acronym.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sticks in your head.
You do not forget YWAM.
No.
It just sounds like fun too, doesn't it?
Yeah,
sound like fun.
it's like a water park. It sounds like a water park.
It does sound like a
I'm going to
water
go
park.
on the YWAM. You want to come with me? Last time I lost my suit.
Woo. And then after South Africa, we're going to India for about 10 days, where we'll be visiting
makes sense.
some family.
If
So-
you
That's
use your
just a-
accent, they will think you really blend in.
right.
That's just a family visit, right?
Yeah, well, we're flying through Dubai because that's the cheapest flights I could get. And Dubai is only about 2-3 hours from Mumbai, which is where I have family.
Dubai
we
to
just
Mumbai.
It's in the neighborhood, right? So we decided to add it on.
Your kids, I'm sure, have never been there. Have they? Yeah. That'll be a great thing.
Yeah.
And your dad's coming along?
Yes, my dad is coming along because I called him up. I told him about this trip, and I said, "Look, it's not much more for us to add India onto the trip, and it makes no sense for me to take your grandkids to where you're from,
Right.
and you not come with us."
Right.
So he said, "Well, send me the dates." So I emailed him the dates and information, and he said, "Okay, count me in, but I want to go to South Africa too."
Oh,
So I'm like,
Oh,
"All right." So
That's
he's
great.
coming
to South Africa.
He's coming.
too?
Yeah, we're all.
awesome. Good for him.
So I don't know if he knows what he's getting himself into.
Are
with
you going to
Y
take? I
whammers.
assume you have it all planned out, right? Because you're
More or less.
You're a pretty copious planner. Are
It's
you?
going to be really interesting for him to be. Is he going to be around the whole wide?
I don't know. So the agenda is most of the days we're in South Africa. I'm teaching all morning, and then we're free in the afternoons and evenings. So we'll do some day trips and see some stuff.
You're going
and-
to go to the island, the Mandela Island.
Yeah, we'll go to. I was in Cape Town 4 years ago
Yeah.
for the Lausanne.
Right.
What is
It's
it?
a big
Lausanne
lasagna
Congress.
convention.
Yeah, the Lausanne Congress for World Evangelization in 2010, and Cape Town is just stunning. It's an amazing place. So the chance to take my kids back and Amanda is just great. So we're staying. They provided this house for us to stay in, which overlooks the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
They said we're like 15 minutes away from a penguin colony. We get monkeys in our backyard, and it'll be really
The kids
cool.
are never going to want to come home.
Well, yeah, well, some of them don't want to leave in the first place.
Oh, they will once they have gone.
So
they
we
will not want to
decided
come
we're
back.
going to pull them out of school for the month and take them around the world.
I think
So-
it's great. Fantastic.
So that's why we're
So-
recording this.
I want to
early.
be in your suitcase.
No sky. Excuse me. No. I'm a little broken up about it. No sky November.
Sorry, guys. I might
So-
email in some updates or something.
You might
guys-
email in some updates.
Do we have some interesting stuff
Yes,
happening
we,
anyway?
We have some interesting guests coming in.
Yeah, who's coming
to
in?
fill in. I'm not going to say.
Oh.
I'm not going to say.
It's a
You're just
secret?
going to have to tune in to find out what we're going to do.
They are very good guests, so
replace
you don't want to miss.
Sky. You don't want to miss,
wanna miss
the
it.
next month.
I'll be here.
And Christian will be here too, and Drew Dick will be here at least once, maybe twice. We'll have to see how it works out. Anyway, it was a bad week for commercial space travel. Did you?
I
Yes.
saw a
Yeah.
crash happen.
Yeah.
Two mishaps.
Oh, I only saw one.
big
I saw the
mishaps.
Virgin one. What was the other?
Yeah, that was the second one. The first one was Orbital Sciences, which was supposed to take 5,000 pounds of supplies to the International Space Station. Their big rocket blew up on the launch pad. 5,000 pounds of bananas all over Virginia.
Now I didn't read the thing carefully, but I heard somebody intentionally blew it up, right?
Oh, really?
No.
I thought somebody hit a button that blew it up. Like it didn't malfunction on the rocket. It was
Well,
some signal.
I watched the launch because, of course, it was videotaped by 100 million people with their iPhones, and it went up, and then something kind of went off the side, and it stopped going up, and then it started coming back down, and then it blew up. Oh, so it failed to achieve.
Failed to launch.
Failed
It
to
failed
launch.
to launch,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah,
It was a millennial rocket.
and this was the first. This was the first, I think, commercial launch because NASA's been hiring companies to do it now. Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, which sounds like a really good
Sounds like a good movie, actually.
cleansing cleaner,
Oh.
household cleaner. This will clean all your space.
I thought you were going to say a colon cleanser.
No, ouch, that would hurt. And then Orbital Science is another one, and then. What's his name?
Branson.
The
Virgin Group.
Amazon guy has his own space company.
Bezos?
Yes,
Bezos?
Bezos has a space company. He's trying to figure out.
It's like all the cool kids are getting
All the
them,
cool
though.
kids.
in Silicon Valley.
if you have everything, what do you need?
A space company.
Right.
Yeah. So Orbital Sciences, boom. Now, one of the issues has been apparently they don't make their own rocket engines like Elon Musk, like the really cool kids make their own rocket engines, of course, because why would you want to be a rocket scientist if you don't get to make your own rocket engines? Of
course.
Orbital Sciences buys old engines from the Russians. And the engines they've been using were actually built in the 1960s. So
That's a
they're
problem.
like 50-year-old engines.
If you're not going to invest in a rocket scientist, then you shouldn't have,
shouldn't have a space company.
I think that you don't outsource
Yes,
that.
but then a few days after that, Richard Branson, Virgin Galactic, testing the little ship that's going to take rich guys like Leo DiCaprio has bought one of the first tickets and has auctioned it off to go with him to go up because you get to go 70 miles up and see the curvature of the Earth and be weightless.
Does he get
for
to
a few
sketch you
minutes.
naked when you're up there, or stand in the front of the rocket and say, "I'm the king of the world"?
That would be interesting. And they were testing it last week, and it blew up. The one
Was it a Russian-built rocket? As well?
no, but they were experimenting with a new fuel.
Oh.
But they already tested it on the ground, and they said it worked fine. And then
Why didn't the co-pilot get out and the pilot did?
I don't know.
I feel bad for him.
Yeah, only one of the pilots survived. So this takes a little bit of the shine off of, wow, we're going to go into space so much now, and we don't need NASA to do it anymore. You can go into space on your own. And you wonder, because it's very obvious that it's kind of dangerous to go into space.
Yeah.
That it's generally not safe. It's not a safe
It
place.
is a risky venture.
But we still want to do it. So on Hawaii, did you hear about this?
No.
On Hawaii, Mount Mauna Loa.
Oh, that erupted?
No, it didn't erupt. The big
I
mountain.
want you keep trying. Let's hear it.
Mauna Loa, Mauna Loa, Mauna Lua, Mauna Lahuhu.
Subpoena.
Subpoena. That was
The
awesome.
volcano that is the Big Island. NASA has put a little installation up there where there's no trees, no vegetation, no animals. It's basically a bubble, a white plastic vinyl bubble that's 36 feet in diameter and 20 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 people are going to live in it
Come on, a biosphere?
for 8 months
Why?
to see what sort of social and emotional dynamics would happen on an 8-month journey to Mars.
Are they filming this?
It's like the ultimate church small group right there.
6 people have sealed themselves into a white vinyl dome in Hawaii to embark on it. There's the little bubble right there. Maybe Bill can put that up. To embark on an 8-month test of how their mental health might fare during a mission to Mars.
That looks so depressing. There's no windows or anything.
No, it's just a bubble. You're just in a. I mean, imagine that 6 people, and it's 3 girls and 3 guys.
How
Do they
old are
know each other?
I think are they like
Are they
frat
friends?
boys?
Yeah. How do they?
Are they random
is it-
people?
Is it like Big Brother where you have to compete to get in?
They're in their 20s and 30s. The longest U.S. Mars simulation yet, in case you're keeping score on what the longest U.S. Mars simulation is to date, involves 3 men and 3 women who have no access to fresh food, limited access to internet that requires 20-minute intervals between a click and a response.
Oh, gosh.
Because that's how long
That's
it would take
torture.
if you're traveling to Mars. And they're allowed to venture outside the igloo-like enclosure only if wearing a spacesuit. So if they want to go out to see fresh air, they have to put on a full enclosed spacesuit.
I hope they're paying them a lot of money for this.
And they have to do this for 8 months.
What are the qualifications for being one of these 6 people?
They actually said it's like the opposite of a reality show in that you're recruiting for lack of drama, as opposed to a reality show where they recruit for drama.
Oh, there will be drama.
But
Trust me.
NASA is aiming for a human mission to Mars by the 2030s.
Why?
But experts are still not sure if humans can withstand the radiation that the journey would involve. It could take 8 months to reach the red planet, not to mention time spent on an orb with a thin atmosphere and no known food source, followed by an attempt to return to Earth. One recent study found that with the current limits of technology, adventurers to Mars would start dying in 68 days. Another study out this week says the risk of radiation-induced cancer would limit any trip to 1 year total round trip, which they can't even do.
Why? Why do we need to do
We've
that?
sent rovers there and
I
robots.
know,
We
I
send
know.
robots to kill the bad guys now with the drones
I
and
know.
stuff.
Why do we need to send people? Because we love to explore. You know what they're doing.
Okay, exploring is one thing.
We love to
trying
explore.
Trying to figure out how to colonize,
We love to explore. Well, then there's people like Stephen Hawking that say we have to figure out how to live somewhere else because we're going to ruin.
Well, that's what the new
this place.
Christopher Nolan movie is about. That
Yeah.
Interstellar
Right.
movie with.
But we can't get anywhere further away than Mars, and we know what Mars is like, and we know you can't really live there, so it seems a little bit pointless.
I don't know. Why don't just send 8 people to like Detroit? See if they can survive
Colonize
there
it.
for
If we could
68 days.
recolonize Detroit,
That would be awesome.
That would solve some of our, running
Right.
out of room issues.
Yeah. And we know at least you can breathe the air there, at least for
You know,
8
and
months.
Detroit's not
Better
the
than
only city that's like
Beijing.
that. There are a lot of other cities in the United. I was just in Springfield, Ohio recently.
And there's nothing there.
Well,
Isn't that where the
Archer's
Simpsons
Daniel
live?
Midland used to be there, like Ford used to be in Detroit, and they
Tumbleweeds?
pulled out, and
Yeah.
it's a dump.
Tumbleweeds.
Are these people only in the bubble in Hawaii for 8 months because they figure in the 9th month there's going to have to be a baby born?
I will tell you, it sounds sort of like when I went on national tour.
Yeah.
I went with 10 guys and
Wait,
4
what's
girls.
national tour?
It was the National Players is the nation's longest running classical touring company. And so I was on the 40th
It's like the
tour.
Harlem Globetrotters.
Classical? What do you mean?
Only Shakespeare and other classic
okay.
works. So
You weren't
I was
playing classical music on your viola.
No, I was Hero in Much Ado About Nothing, and I was Muriel the Goat in the musical version of George Orwell's Animal Farm. So there you have it.
This is something I did not know.
Yeah, it was actually the
were
world
a goat.
premiere. It was the world premiere.
My goal is to be a sheep.
And
Wow.
but anyway, there were 10 guys and 4 girls. We were stuck together for a year. We had an 18-wheeler with all of our sets and then a van. And we had to share that, and we had to set up the sets and strike them twice a day, doing 2 shows. And everybody on the trip wanted to equally share the hotel rooms, the dressing rooms, and I was the only believer in the troupe.
Wow, that sounds great.
It was.
So how did that work?
It was very complicated, and I quickly became an enemy because I wanted only a female hotel room. That meant all 4 girls had to stay together all the time. So I was
How could you do
not
that?
popular.
You were the party pooper.
I was.
How could you do that?
I ended
Everybody
up
needs a
having to like
pooper. That's why
dress
we
myself in the
invited
bathroom,
you.
but it was like this commune I was living in, and everybody was okay with
They
that.
were like circus people.
Yeah, everybody slept with everybody else, and it
Oh,
was
that's great.
it was not
Did your
for
parents
me.
know you were doing this?
I spoke to my parents very frequently. I ended up having to leave it. It was not.
Okay, well, if you don't want to
Great.
do that, if you don't want to go to Mars, you want to do something safer, you would think that what you could do is just sit in your basement and play video games, right?
My kids would say that's a great alternative.
That's a safe alternative. Maybe not. A new study done by Ohio State University examined the anger levels of players after they had played games on either 2D TVs or 3D TVs, and found that if you played your video games in 3D with glasses on, they made you angrier.
Oh well, let's don't do that then. let's just solve that right now.
That raises lots of questions.
Violent video games. 3D gaming increases anger because the players felt more immersed in the violence when they played violent games, said Brad Bushman, co-author of the study at Ohio State. As the technology in video games improves, it has the ability to have stronger effects on players.
They're working on those goggle things.
Yes.
that-
So once we get there, then boy, you're gonna go.
where it's a completely immersive.
It's like every level you
experience.
clear, you're gonna go postal.
Oh, I'm glad I will not have children at that point.
Yeah, but you may have grandchildren.
But I will say, did you see the new release of the COD video game?
The what?
The Call of Duty video game that's
Call of
coming out?
Duty. I thought it was about fish.
No.
I love those fishing games. I'm so good at them.
They
Call
make me
of
violent, though.
Duty, and they have
Yeah.
I saw Kevin Spacey on Jimmy
yeah,
Fallon,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
And so they were
They have
showing.
like a crazy realistic Kevin Spacey.
They actually showed a movie clip of this video game,
Yeah.
and it was scary. Like
Yeah.
it looks so much
And the
like
more
him.
realistic Kevin Spacey is in the game, the more angry you get.
Yeah, that's right.
So
He's kind of bad.
we're in trouble. I'm a little bit concerned because we keep making video games more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go back to like Pong, if you really take somebody down
Frogger.
in Pong, you don't feel like going outside and taking somebody down. It's just not a very,
It doesn't elicit the anger.
No, but we've gone or even Smash Brothers, just these little cartoon guys going, Super Mario Smash Brothers.
Yeah,
Remember that game?
I do.
Funny sound effects. It's like no big deal. But now you're like going to war. Like you're
Right.
legitimately going to war. And
It looks and feels
once
that way.
you put on your Oculus Rift VR goggles,
Right, that's what they're called.
yeah, that Facebook bought for $2 billion from a guy who funded the prototype on Kickstarter. Once you put those on, now you're literally at war, or you're literally assaulting a woman, or you're literally doing whatever it is.
Well, you're actually not literally doing that. Your body thinks you
Your
are.
like
brain
the
is being
Matrix.
stimulated.
It's like the Matrix. So you're getting all the, and it'll,
You know what this is?
Give you little smells into your nose,
What is
to
it?
your olfactory nerves.
It's the end of Western civilization.
Yes, it is. We haven't said that in a long
I know,
time,
but
but
it really
is true.
It is. This is
How
not
many?
good.
How many? 19-year-old guys are we gonna lose for a year or two? And we don't know where they went, and they just got sucked into the Matrix in their goggles.
How many of them are going to come out of those seasons immersed in these games with PTSD or who knows what other kinds of brain
That's interesting.
disorders? Even.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the other night, and I wrote a devotional about this, which will be out probably after
Oh.
people see this. But I'm reading this book about. Anyway, history of India and South Africa, all these things, because I'm traveling there,
Yeah.
right? So I'm reading this book, and he's telling the story of this rebellion in India in 1857, and just the most horrible, unspeakable, graphic things humans can do to each other. It was awful. I read it about 10 o'clock at night. I was so bothered by it, I could not sleep. And that's from reading a book.
Is that the one that happened when the British changed the cartridges in their guns, and the rumor
No.
spread that there was pig fat
Yes.
in the new cartridges to
Yes.
make Muslims come in contact?
Yes.
What?
Yes. And so they went ballistic.
Yes. But the things they did to children, it was just on both sides, but really it was. So I'm thinking you just read that and it triggers
On
enough.
both sides equally, or are you just saying that?
Well,
to
there was a
be,
lot of vengeance. It sparked a lot of cycles
politically
of vengeance.
correct.
No, I'm not.
Would Bill Maher agree with you in your assessment that it was
The-
equal on both sides?
The Indians at first who rebelled against the British rulers went crazy far, but then it
Yeah.
sparked all kinds of retribution for
Okay.
a long time on the other side. So it was just really indiscriminate killing. And
Okay.
anyway, the details of what happened are
This
just.
is a fun story.
It's a great
Well,
story.
you know,
My point is, when you
Is
read
there
it
a
off the
video
page,
game that recreates it for my Oculus Rift?
I felt somewhat traumatized just reading it off of a page.
Yeah.
Actually seeing it, or even worse, reenacting and participating in that kind of stuff is going to have an impact
Yeah.
on brains.
It
just
reminds me
is.
of that video that I saw where, you've seen the little baby looking at a magazine and the baby's flipping the pages, and then they put an iPad in there and, or opposite
No, it
way.
was the opposite.
Yeah, where
the-
they start
the
trying to
baby
swipe
thought the magazine was a broken
Right.
iPad.
Right. So, the whole joke was that, Steve Jobs has rewritten our operating system. And I think that's what we're talking about here, that our operating systems are going to be
So-
rewritten if we do that.
We're in trouble.
It's the end of Western civilization.
Did you hear about the feminist video game developers who are complaining about the portrayal of women in video games? And because they've made it such an issue, they're now getting hate mail and death threats from male video gamers.
Not a surprise.
Well, what's interesting about that is for so many years, various groups have protested about depiction of their group in Hollywood or in television or whatever, and yet video games make far more money now.
They do.
Than Hollywood
And
productions
video games
do.
portray women horribly.
They do.
Except the cute little Japanese video games where you raise crops or plant things. And even Pokemon was maybe not as bad.
So what are they doing about the depiction of women in video games?
Complaining and then getting death threats because they complained. So
So, what's the answer to all of this? And is there any
Jesus.
application for us?
Jesus,
God.
Jesus, Christian, you should know that. What is your name?
My name is Christian, and that
There
means
you go.
follower of Christ. Jesus is the answer.
No, it's for one thing, you can't believe the notion that technology is neutral. That it doesn't make any difference. That, when I was a kid, we played cops and robbers with toy guns in the backyard, and this is just their version of that.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't, you can't buy that. You have to say, no, wait a minute. And you also have to resist the urge to say, well, I shouldn't really talk because I'm just not a kid these days, so, I'm just being the old fuddy-duddy. And this is progress, I didn't like, or my parents didn't like my music, so what are you going to do? It's like, no, music has gotten really, really bad. in terms of sexuality and in some cases in terms of violence and violence towards women. You don't have to say, oh, I'm just reacting that way because I'm the older generation. You can actually say, no, this is not going to be in my house.
I've been wrestling with that because I keep encountering, like, as my daughter gets older and her friends, and I'm seeing what they're doing and the devices and this, that. Part of me is just finds the whole thing revolting.
Are you ready to go live on an island?
But I'm going, and then I check myself and I go, am I just becoming an old fart?
See, it's happening. You're feeling I don't want to be my parents.
Yeah,
or
but then I
grandparents.
go, that's what I'm having a trouble discerning is, am I just getting old and becoming one of those, back in my day, we didn't have a device, or is there something genuinely different about what's happening now that it's okay for me to get kind of cranky about?
Right. Well, go to your kids and take away their phone.
And see what happens.
That's what concerns me.
When we were kids, if they turned off the TV, we would have been like, oh, you're being ridiculous.
Yeah, but then we'd get over it. But it's because we weren't spending 8 hours.
It's not like
a day.
attached to us.
It wasn't every conversation, every relationship is mediated by a tiny screen.
I think there's starting to be a pendulum swing a little bit the other way. I do think there are adults that are stepping in. Well, like I'm hearing every day some sort of new thing about people that are proposing alternatives to what you do with cell phones. Like you talked about that box one.
Your school was using them, and now they're not using them.
Right. And
they changed their mind.
Right. I saw one restaurant giving a 10% discount if you walk in and put your phone in a box. And don't use your phone.
And then they sell it?
No, then you can have it when you leave.
Oh, okay.
But there's been some swinging back the other way.
And it's nice that, the Google Glass, the little computer on your face, actually isn't going over very well.
I've wondered about that because like Apple with their new watch that's coming out, I wonder if the whole wearable device thing is kind of where this thing jumps the shark. Where some people go, no, we've taken this too far. Except I worry about young people because I don't think they have that differentiation. They're like the more technology and the more integrated, the better. But for those of us not born and raised with it, I think the whole idea of wearing it is a little creepy.
The key is if someone is jumping on a bandwagon that you don't approve of, is to come up with an insulting name for people who do that. So with Google Glass, if you wore Google glasses in public, people started calling you a glass hole.
Oh, gosh.
That became the name for people who actually wear Google glasses. And once you're called
I kind of like that.
Once you're called that, you think twice. It's like, maybe these don't make me look as cool as I thought. Remember when the wireless ear thingies?
The Bluetooth.
The Bluetooth ear thingies for your phone came out, and everybody was just walking around with them all the time. And then we all looked in the mirror and said, I look kind of dorky. And so it's kind of stopped. And you don't see that as much anymore. You don't see people with them permanently attached to their ears.
Because when there's a new technology out like that, the early adapters want to show it off.
Yes.
I'm hip, I'm cool, I'm with it, I'm ahead of everyone else. But then at some point you look like a...
And of course, we all stopped talking on the phone and we just text. So it was like, why do I have this thing in my ear? This doesn't help.
Now in Illinois, you have to have it in your ear or you can't talk on your phone in the car.
Or you just have Bluetooth in your car.
So I just heard a thing on the radio today saying that, I don't know who did the study, that people who with smartphones actually using it as a phone is the 6th most popular use of the device.
Oh, really? What are the other 5?
Anything
checking
else?
Email, texting, checking social media sites like Facebook, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what else.
I'm all in that top 4.
But actually using it as a phone or a clock, an alarm clock is more common. And people don't use it as a phone anymore, but we still call it a phone.
Right. When my phone actually rings, I get confused. I just stare at it and try to figure out
what do I do?
Why do they actually want to speak with me? What is so urgent that they actually want to interrupt my day and talk to me? And then I usually just ignore them.
It's really just a portable computer device that we happen to use as a phone.
Yeah. Okay, Christians in Canada.
What about them?
She's right here. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm not in
Christian
Canada.
is not in Canada, but if you are a Christian in Canada, things are getting a little more interesting. Remember
We need
talked
to talk to Drew about this because he's the
Yeah,
Canadian.
I'll bring it up with him. We talked about Trinity Western University.
I remember that.
Trinity Western University, evangelical school in Canada, Western Canada, started a law school, tried to get it accredited. It was approved, and then there was a massive protest of lawyers saying, no, do not accredit that law school. Why?
Because Bill Maher was going to speak there?
No.
That was last week's story.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like many evangelical colleges, they have a lifestyle covenant
Right.
that you have to sign on. And one of the things on the lifestyle covenant, which many colleges have, evangelical colleges, is that sexuality is only approved when it is within a marriage between a man and a woman.
Right.
And so the lawyers
How
in
puritanical.
yeah, absolutely. The lawyers in British Columbia went berserk and said that's discrimination. You can't train good lawyers if you bring them up in an environment of discrimination. How could they defend someone's rights if they have been steeped in discrimination? So the British Columbian Law Society of like 12,000 lawyers decided they were going to, and I think this is the first time they've ever done this, put it to a referendum for every lawyer in British Columbia, that they would all vote
Wow.
on whether Trinity Western University could be accredited as a law school.
Let me guess. It did not pass.
It did not pass. In fact, it did not pass about 2/3 to 1, 2 to 1. 6,000 lawyers, no, 7,000 lawyers, I think. No, about half actually, 2/3 voted. Of those that voted, 2/3 said no. So nearly 6,000 British Columbian lawyers, about half the profession, have voted to have the Provincial Law Society withdraw accreditation from a proposed law school at Trinity Western University. A historic province-wide poll conducted this month. 5,951 lawyers, 75% who voted no on this. And this was how they summarized it. One of the people who led the movement, Victoria lawyer Michael Mulligan. One of the leaders of the movement to reverse the society's approval of the TWU Law School was ecstatic. I thought it was a fantastic showing for the second time because they did another one to get the issue raised. So this was the second time they'd all turned out. The large return and clear result sends an important message about the core values of the legal profession that include upholding the legal rights of all persons. The clear message to TWU is this: if you wish approval from the legal profession in British Columbia, you will need to cease your discriminatory practices. The discipline or expulsion of students and staff for private sexual activity is unacceptable.
So the question I then have is, are they going to also disbar lawyers who may hold to traditional sexual ethical views? So if you're already
You can't be a law school and
right,
hold to traditional.
but if you're already a licensed lawyer in British Columbia, and let's say you're Roman Catholic, or you are an Orthodox Jew, or you are a practicing Muslim who believes that sexuality should only be expressed within the bounds of a male-female marriage, should you not be allowed to practice law in Canada?
You know, it's interesting. They're saying you should not penalize people for their personal choices and lifestyles.
Yeah.
But if that came to if that debate popped up, then they would be saying that we couldn't have our own personal point of view.
and be a law school.
No. I'm saying if it jumps to
if it jumps to what Sky was saying.
right, if it jumps
which
to
I
what's
don't think they're proposing to do. I assume you can be a racist and still be a lawyer, although I imagine you can be disbarred for certain things.
Well, and then the next question is, okay, the Trinity Western Law School, whatever their name is, they're not imposing these requirements on anybody. They are inviting faculty and students to participate in a community where they agree to these things.
Right.
So people opt into this community covenant agreement. They're not being forced to go there.
Right.
So, I think it would be a very different situation if, say, the government of British Columbia said, we're only going to allow people
Right.
we're going to impose this as law, but this is a voluntary community where you choose to go to school here and you agree to these requirements.
And it raises an issue because his argument is if you wish approval from the legal profession, you need to cease discriminatory practices. The legal profession must uphold the legal rights of all persons. And technically, it's not illegal in British Columbia to have same-sex attraction, to have same-sex activity. That's not illegal. It's not illegal. I assume same-sex marriage is legal in British Columbia, though I'm not positive. If it's not illegal, then you can't stop people from doing it, or you're being...
Even on a voluntary basis.
But see, that also would get into... I mean, it's not illegal to lie. It's not illegal to do all sorts of things that you still might prohibit in a school setting. It's not... I mean, plagiarism isn't technically illegal, right?
Well,
It depends on what you're doing.
In a commercial sense, it could be.
But for a school paper, I mean, you don't go to jail because you plagiarized for a
well,
school final.
What it shows is they're taking sexual behavior out of the realm of ethics. They're saying if you plagiarize, if you lie, if you cheat, if you steal, those are ethical things that you can be against. But engaging in sexual activity outside of marriage is no longer
That's not ethics.
It's not ethics.
It used to be
preference.
ethics. It's not ethics anymore.
It's preference.
Yes.
And preference is wrong to prohibit. So it's a sea change in the way we think about sexuality.
It is. And I don't know how likely that is to start popping up in the U.S. I imagine eventually it would, but our religious freedom is a bit stronger here than in Canada.
The bigger dilemma for me is, as an American, is to what extent should groups of people be allowed to freely associate with one another in voluntary communities where they decide for themselves what standards they want to hold each other to. And when does a government or an outside group come in and say, no, you can't do that? So, you know what, if a group of Muslims want to get together and say, you know what, we all agree that all the women in our community are going to wear head coverings, and if you refuse to have a head covering, you can't be a part of this community, I think it would be wrong for the government or any outside group to come in and say, no, you can't make your women wear those head coverings. Well, we're not making them. We're asking them to if they want to be a part of the group. This goes back to the Boy Scouts.
Right.
If the Boy Scouts say we're not going to have gay and lesbian scoutmasters because it's just part of who we are, should the government be allowed to come in and say, no, you have to do that?
Right. Southern Adventist University, you can't buy anything caffeinated there. In the lunchroom, in the vending machines, there's no caffeine because Southern Adventists or
caffeine's just a preference. It's not immoral.
Seventh-day Adventists don't drink caffeine. And I could, do I file a suit and say, hey, I have a right to drink what I want to drink. You're prohibiting my rights. Government, come and make them put Diet Coke in the soda machine.
And do they have like a culinary major there? Because how can you train somebody to be a chef or a beverage server and not offer caffeinated beverages?
They would be a discriminatory chef.
That's right. And they're not being prepared for serving in the real wider world.
Or alcohol. I'm sure. I think alcohol's flat out too. Which it also is still, at Wheaton College and at most Christian schools.
And yet Wheaton College has a bartending school.
No, they do not. Stop spreading that rumor.
Oh, it's the end of Western Canada as we know it. Maybe not Western civilization, but that is a little concerning that, because they had trouble getting their teaching school accredited for the same reason.
Right.
But the Supreme Court in Canada upheld it and allowed them to be accredited for teaching.
So does this mean then that they're going to have to get rid of their law school altogether?
They don't have one. They can't have one. They were proposing to start one.
Oh.
But if you can't get accreditation,
then it's your lawyers
can't come out
work.
with a law degree.
Right.
You can't practice. So they've basically been shut down unless, and now this is where it gets tricky, what's more important for them to have the ability to train lawyers with a Christian worldview, meaning having a law school in a Christian setting, or maintaining their behavior standards. Because now if you have, if you have students on campus, if they have to drop the pledge, basically, for law students so they can have a law school, now if you have students living on campus, and they're having premarital sex in the dorms, other students was like, well, you can't do that because you signed the pledge. They can do that because they didn't sign the pledge. We can't do anything about that, so just don't gripe about it.
Complicated mess.
Nuts.
It isn't a mess.
It's crazy.
This is only going to last until it backfires. And
how will it backfire? What will that look like,
You have to think
Scott?
they're setting a precedent here where it's okay to prohibit these things among Orthodox or conservative theological Christians, but sooner or later it's going to come back to bite them, where there's a liberal group, a progressive group that wants to say, no, you have to abide by certain expectations to be part of our group, and someone else can go and say, no, you can't do that, that's discriminatory.
But
That's what's happening to Bill Maher, where his own ideas
Yeah.
are coming back and haunting him, because what goes around comes around.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, Peter Boghossian and I were going back and forth about what exactly his sin is, and why is it okay to insult the Bible, but not okay to insult the Quran. And it's the perception that Muslims are a historically oppressed minority, which we said last week isn't really historically accurate.
Well, right, but the same thing is going to apply here, because historically we think of the LGBT community as a
Yes.
repressed and victimized community.
Right.
But at some point in the future, they're no longer going to have that view. They're not going to be viewed
play
as a
that
stigma.
card.
Exactly. And I know of cases where. I don't want to get into too many details, but
Oh, please do.
where there
Miley Cyrus?
have been lawsuits of kind of reverse discrimination, where an employer who was gay or lesbian started cleaning house and firing people who are straight and repopulating the company with people who are gay. And it was
You're talking about Broadway, right?
no, but there have been cases where
Watch
that's
yourself,
happened.
pal.
Because people think they're immune from these kinds of things. Well, because we're an oppressed minority. No one's
Right.
going to accuse us of being discriminatory.
Right.
Well, no. If you're going to say that a Christian group can be discriminatory or a Muslim group can be discriminatory, sooner or later it's going to come back and say, a gay group can also be discriminatory. And so when you're a repressed, oppressed minority, you have license to do just about anything.
What if you're a depressed minority? What if my group is feeling really depressed about this? Do you get special rights for being a depressed minority?
Probably.
Okay. Because I think our minority is getting a little depressed.
Which minority are you talking about?
Conservative Christians in the northern half of America. Okay, we got one more story, because we know how bad religion is, right?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Apparently, it causes lots of wars.
Wars, violence, terrible things. Oppression, repression, depression, expression, any kind of pressions. All pression
From religion.
comes from religion.
Impression.
Impression, there's more. Come on.
Compression.
Compression. That's a good one. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, there's a new book. This is an article in The Atlantic. There's a new book about religion and its inherent violence or lack of. Basically, the narrative that religion is inherently violent and responsible for most of the world's violence.
Which is a popular point that's made by atheists.
Yes.
Told that so much.
It's kind of an internet meme almost.
Yes,
that-
almost.
Every bad thing in the world is the fault of some religion.
Yes. So,
and
Karen,
if we eliminated religion,
Right. Which is what
Then-
John Lennon sang about this 34
if
years
we had
ago.
no religion, then think about
There'd be
how
no more war.
we'd all get along. We'd just get along.
Right.
What
Everything would
other
be happy.
reason could there possibly be
For
for
us
me
to
to be
fight.
mad at anyone
Right.
other than their religious beliefs?
Right. I wrote about that in With, the whole
Did you?
fallacy of John Lennon's idea and Imagine there.
With
Yes, he did.
Ding, ding,
Ding, sorry.
ding. With ding. Do you need to promote your?
Yeah, we can do that after this story.
Okay, because I'm going to be done after this story.
Well, we'll promote it then.
Okay, Karen Armstrong wrote a new book. It's called Fields of Blood: Is Religion Inherently Violent? And it's in the Atlantic.
I think that's also the biography of the Chicago Bears.
Fields of Blood.
Yeah.
That's good.
Actually, all the fans want to kill the Bears, so there would be fields of blood if that happened.
Fields of concussions. So she gives talks about religion and violence. Says during the talk she's already that she's given about the book, she says the first person to ask her a question.
She's British, you know. You could speak.
Always says something along these lines. No one actually believes that religion is the cause of all major wars in history. But then for the rest of the talk, she says audience members are insisting that religion is the chief cause that is to blame. In her book, she writes that she has heard this sentence recited like a mantra by American commentators and psychiatrists, London taxi drivers, and Oxford academics. Religion may not have caused all the wars in history, these people say, but it is inherently violent in a way that has undeniably shaped world history for the worse. Okay, so Armstrong has isolated, this is a really big book, it goes through 7,000 years of the history
Oh, my.
of humanity and religion.
Am I going to have to read the whole book to find out the
7,000
answer?
years. I'm just interested in 1917 through 1950. I'm going to read that part of the book.
Okay.
Until Billy Graham showed up on the scene and made everything okay by starting Christianity Today. Armstrong has isolated an interesting quality of contemporary discourse about religion. It's really, really vague. Even posing the question at the center of Armstrong's book assumes that there's a unified thing called religion that has stayed constant over thousands of years of human history. But as Armstrong points out in the book, there is no universal way to define religion.
Something we've brought up on previous podcasts, that we
Yes.
don't have a definition of what is religion.
Yes, which is we talked about it just last week with NPR talking about Day of the Dead and saying it started out as the belief system of the indigenous Mexicans, but then it became religious when the Catholics showed up. Well, okay.
I thought the
So-
definition of religion was man's way to worship the divine. It's a system.
That is a definition.
a system that
Except
man
some
came up
religions
with.
don't have a divine.
Right.
So religion then is man's system of worshiping something.
That could be People Magazine. We're worshiping something.
Well, so
Exactly.
It's a very
This
nebulous thing. That's the
This
whole
is
point.
the problem. She says, in the West, we see religion as a coherent system of obligatory beliefs, institutions, and rituals, whose practice is essentially private and hermetically sealed off from all secular activities. But words in other languages that we translate as religion almost invariably refer to something larger, vaguer, and more encompassing. This is an important premise of one of Armstrong's main arguments. It's impossible to make a coherent case about the role of religion in warfare and violence throughout history and across the world simply because religion plays very different roles in different cultures. Now, Hinduism, for example.
yes.
You were saying.
What?
Go ahead. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about Hinduism.
Hinduism. I've been learning about Hinduism.
Oh, have you?
Did you know that? Because I want to be able to relate to
What's
you better.
the sacred text of Hinduism?
There isn't one. There's many.
Well, what's the main one?
The Dalai Lama, the Vishnu Krishna, the Vindu Kabai.
The Bhagavad Gita.
The Bhagavad Gita. I knew that word.
Yeah.
I knew that thing.
But Hinduism as a concept is actually, even applying the word Hinduism to describe it, is a Western construct.
There is not a Hinduism.
There is not a Hinduism. And what
It's kind of a choose your own religion.
Yeah, and it was the British, when they were ruling over the Indians, who were trying to make sense of the religious beliefs of all of their Indian subjects, which were all over the map, and so they kind of wrapped them all up into one package and wrote Hinduism on them. And actually named, so it was the British that came up with, and it was the Hindu was actually a group within India. It wasn't even a religious belief. It was an ethnic group, a tribe. So the West, coming from the background of Christianity, said, what is your religion? And everyone said, well, I do this, and I do this, and I believe in this God, and I believe in this God. That's why you can be a Hindu and have a million gods, and you can be a Hindu and have no gods. They're atheists.
Really, every home, every family you go to in a Hindu context has a different set of practices, a different set of teachers, a different set of doctrines or beliefs or rituals. It's just a completely nebulous system.
And so that's a case of us applying a Western understanding of religion, which is basically a Christian understanding of religion, and applying it, throwing it on a different group where it doesn't fit at all, but we don't care because we like to label
It's
things.
like putting dogs in Halloween costumes. It's wrong on many levels, and it doesn't quite fit, but we don't care.
And it makes us giggle.
It suits our
Does
purposes.
make us giggle. But it's still a system. It's still
It's not a single system.
It's not a single
It's
system.
it's a category.
They are systems.
Like, here's an example, Christian. We would probably all agree that to be a Christian, you have to believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ.
That is the definition. Yes.
Right. But if you ask somebody, well, what is it that makes you a Hindu? There is no single answer to that.
It's that you're Indian and you believe in lots of gods.
Well, a lot of times what it means is, well, I'm just not a Muslim and I'm not a Christian. And
I'm not a Buddhist.
And I'm
which
not a
also
Buddhist. So
came out of
I kind
India.
of, my own family in India, they have, they're Hindu by background, but most of them, their primary focus of devotion is actually imported from Sufism, which is a mystical branch of Islam.
Yeah.
But they integrated Sufism with Hinduism, and so they've,
But they're still
and
they're
Sikhism.
still
It's this weird
worshiping.
amount.
There is a system with which they access
Yes.
something
but
of meaning
that is going to be different
to
for the
them.
Hindu family
Yes.
in the building
So
across the street
point
from
is,
them.
you can't you couldn't even begin to draw a conclusion about whether Hinduism promotes violence, because you'd have to say which
Hinduism?
which belief within Hinduism,
Right.
within the bucket. You'd have to pick a bucket out at random. And she makes some interesting points. Obviously, people aren't looking at Hinduism today when they talk about violence, and they're really not looking at Christianity anymore when they talk about violence. They have to point back to the Crusades, typically, which was ended 500 years ago. We're typically talking about Muslims. All of Armstrong's arguments come back to the same basic point. It's impossible to explain contemporary or historical violence solely through religion. Muslim fundamentalism has often, though again not always, segged into physical aggression. This is not because Islam is constitutionally more prone to violence than Protestant Christianity, but rather because Muslims had a much harsher introduction to modernity. Here she dates modernity to the defeat of the Ottoman Empire during World War I. In other words, even religious history has to be read through the narrative lens of politics.
So
Does that make any sense?
Yes.
here's my way of kind of explaining this to people whenever I get religion is inherently violent and causes wars and conflict. You know, the NRA likes to say guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? If you take the gun out of the hand and you put them a sword,
Right.
they'll kill with that or whatever it might be.
Right. A
Well,
crock pot,
I
a
think
frozen chicken.
Exactly. The same thing applies to religion. It isn't religion that causes wars, it's people that cause
Sure.
wars. Now, the reality is that for most of human history, religion has been a core component of people's belief systems, and therefore
Right.
they use religion as a justification for a war. But you take war out of their hand and replace it with money or economics.
You mean religion?
You take religion out of their
war
hand
out of
and
their
replace it with economics, and they'll wage war based on economics.
Right.
Or if
Sure.
you take that out and you say we're going to base it on secular atheism, fine, we'll wage war based on that. But the problem is not inherently religion. The problem is human beings. It's
Right.
the anger and aggression and greed that infects
They
our
played
souls.
too many 3D video games, probably.
People
Right.
don't kill people. Ideas kill people.
People with ideas.
Well, the idea has to be incarnated in something. It has to manifest itself in an entity with volition.
Right. Now,
That's us.
I think the argument, going back to the gun thing,
Yeah.
do guns make it easier to kill people?
Much.
It's a lot
I
easier to
tried
kill someone with a gun.
with a frozen chicken.
Don't
was a-
work.
I was only
It
like-
could happen.
I was only like halfway done, and I had a thawed chicken.
It could
And then
happen.
it was nothing.
if you threw a big, huge, gigantic Purdue oven stuffer roaster at somebody's head.
Or you can just clog their nostrils with chickpeas. Wait for them to suffocate.
That's what we'll do
so
in VeggieTales to
the-
show the roots of religious violence.
A handgun can kill somebody a lot easier than a dagger, and
Yeah.
a machine gun can kill somebody a whole lot easier than a handgun.
Oh, is
And
that
there
true?
are some ideas and some religious beliefs that do tend to cause more violence than others.
Right.
And so you can't just say some religions are
Right.
They're all
and
the
this
same.
Was interesting. She makes a point about suicide bombing. What all suicide operations have in common is a strategic goal to compel liberal democracies to withdraw military forces from territory that the terrorist considers to be their homeland. She says this is not to deny that Hamas is as much a religious as a national movement, only that the fusion of the two is a modern innovation. The exalted love of the fatherland, which has no roots in Islamic culture. Remember, there's no real diehard link between Islam and a particular piece of land, is now suffused with Muslim fervor.
except
Well, that does not. Does
Islam
that?
is-
If you went after Mecca, if
right.
you went after Mecca,
Medina.
obviously you'd have some issues.
and that's not
but
true either for the kamikazes in Japan.
Right.
That was a different religion.
I know, but still, it was suicide bombers that weren't
Oh, yeah.
defending their homeland.
They were.
well, they were
defending.
they were
their
trying to
home.
expand their home.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
that-
were.
they're right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the
Splitting
point
hairs,
is,
but-
you give people a powerful ideology, and some of them are going to do really bad things with it.
Yeah.
See, and I think as Christians, it can be very easy and tempting to use Muslim violence and say, well, that's because Islam is bad, not like Christianity, and use it as a apologetic counter argument.
Well, you get into trouble there because one of the most statistically Christian nations on earth,
Yeah,
over 90% of the citizens claiming Christianity,
Yeah.
Rwanda.
yeah,
And it had one of the worst genocides of the 20th century.
yeah,
So
But
it gets
that's-
very, very messy. And
because they.
But don't you think we've
Drugs.
come far enough to accept the idea that the violence of ISIS or the jihad is one small section of Islam, and that it's not
I think
means
most people accept that.
yeah. I mean, I think we've kind of moved.
And where Bill Maher is having his interesting time is against people who say there's no connection between jihadists and true Islam. And he's saying, no, there's connective tissue. That was his words. There's connective tissue. And that's why he was called a racist and a bigot. Partly, though, because he's pejorative. And he actually, he makes fun of anyone that he disagrees with. And if you're going to do that, is okay, but you typically need to go for the oppressor to make fun of people, not the historically oppressee or marginalized, or particularly if you're a white male, another ethnic
Right.
group.
so
Right.
That's a good way to get
in trouble.
to get uninvited from giving a commencement address at a
Right.
major university.
the thing that Armstrong, what's her first name?
Her name is Karen Armstrong.
Karen
The book
Armstrong,
is
yeah.
Fields of Blood is Religion Inherently Violent.
The point she's making, which I think is an important one, is there's a popular belief in Western secular society, particularly in Europe and now more and more in North America, is that religion causes wars, and if we just get rid of religion, the world will be a
Yes.
safer, more harmonious place. And history has proven that's absolutely
We
not
have
the
to
case.
get rid of people.
Because
All the people. If we got rid of all the people, it would be
Imagine
very,
all the people.
it would be very
tens of millions
harmonious.
of people have been killed in regimes during the 20th century who are not religious, who are secular, atheist, even regimes. So then the next stage, which worries me perhaps even more, is not just we need to get rid of religious belief, but we need to get rid of any strong belief. That if anyone has strong belief, it's a pretense for violence against others, and therefore you can't tolerate anything.
Right. Doctrine of any
But
kind.
that is absolutely counterintuitive to human instinct. We all want to have a core conviction of belief.
And even if to try to get rid of all belief, you would have to have that belief pretty darn strongly to actually succeed in that.
Yeah, because beliefs
So
don't.
your anti-belief belief would have to be
Exactly.
extraordinarily strong.
You
This
can only replace it
conversation's
with
making
another.
my head hurt.
Which
It's
gets
a
really
little
ugly.
bit,
Okay, we got to plug the devotional real quick.
There's a devotional from Sky. You should read it with your eye. Even when he's in South Africa and India, you can still have him leading you through the Bible and then making a morning every morning with Sky that'll make you closer to God in the sky and in your life and with your kids. If you subscribe, you'll be glad you did, and he'll come to your house once a year and read it to you on your birthday.
Not.
Wow, I think that'll pretty much do it. Right?
That was the. Where do I go to subscribe, Sky?
SkyJitani.com/Devo.
Did you want to read a new?
No,
new
I think you
thing?
gave a pretty good endorsement
Okay.
there. But seriously, go there, check it out.
It's
the
so
Devo.
worth it.
Okay, let's wrap it up. What war? Let's do war. Or here's my final question: if you took 6 people and put them in a plastic bubble, how long until a war breaks out?
I think all 6 should come
I
from
give you
different religions.
3 months.
3 months. If they're all from different religions,
Quicker.
that would be interesting. If you put me in a bubble, if you
What
put
note we
me
going?
in a bubble, how long before there's some trouble? How long before I'm fighting with a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist too? Can't we all just get along while I'm singing my ridiculously silly little song? If we didn't have religious beliefs, it doesn't mean we'd have no reason to make chiefs and go to war with each other. Okay, goodbye. See you
Bye,
next
everybody.
week.
See you
in
We'll
December.
See Sky in a month.